To ease teacher prep time for the Amgen labs, ABE-LA distribution centers will now send out repeating pipette kits for teachers with large numbers of student groups. Repeating pipettes are great time savers. They are used to quickly dispense multiple tubes of the same volume. For example, 30 tubes, each containing 12 microliters. After you submit Form B, your supply order form, your site coordinator will generate a supply spreadsheet. The number of student groups listed here will determine whether you are given a repeating pipette kit to use. Your site coordinator will let you know whether you will be using a repeating pipette or not. ABE-LA provides our teachers with the ABE-LA aliquoting guide to follow when aliquoting for their student groups. Note that this guide has blue highlights. It lists reagents by lab, how to label the tubes, how much to aliquot per tube, and how much the students will actually use for the lab. For example, in Lab 2A, students need 2 microliters of restriction enzyme, labeled RE, but teachers actually aliquot 3 microliters per tube. Each repeating pipette kit will contain 1 repeating pipette, the appropriate aliquoting guide, various syringe tips needed for your lab series, and several color permanent markers. ABE-LA uses 2 different models of repeating pipettes, the Eppendorf Repeater Plus and the Corning Step R pipette. Each model has its own aliquoting guide. It is very important to use the appropriate aliquoting guide as the repeating pipette models vary slightly. The original ABE-LA aliquoting guide has blue highlights, while the Eppendorf guide has green and the Corning Step R guide has orange. Repeating pipettes utilize disposable syringe tips that come in different sizes. There will be 2 different size tips provided in the kit. We will send out the correct number of each volume tip for your lab series. A new tip should be used for each reagent and discarded once used, just as the micropipette tips are. You will receive 1 sterile tip for the LB broth if you are doing the transformation lab. The sterile tip comes inside a paper sleeve. The rest will be non-sterile. The repeating pipette should not be used to aliquot competent cells. Those must still be aliquoted with a P200 micropipette. Lab 6 culture, however, can be aliquoted using a repeater and a non-sterile tip. All tips, except for the one used to aliquot Lab 6 culture, should be discarded in the regular trash. The used culture tip should be discarded in the provided autoclave bag. The color markers can be used to quickly stripe tubes according to their contents. For example, in Lab 2 of the Complete GE series, students receive 4 reagent tubes, K, A, 2.5XB, and RE. The K tubes could be striped red, the A tubes blue, the 2.5XB black, and the RE green. Note that you may need to repeat colors for different labs, so be sure to store these tubes in labeled baggies or tube racks. Students should be given a color code for each lab so they know each tube's contents. Parts of the Eppendorf Repeater Plus. The ejection keys are used to attach the syringe tip. The filling and dispensing levers are named as such. The volume selection dial adjusts the volume dispensed, which is shown on the digital display. In order to use the repeater, a syringe tip must first be attached. They are called syringe tips for a reason. They function exactly as a syringe does. The plunger is pulled up to fill the syringe, and solutions are dispensed by pushing down on the plunger. Syringe tips are labeled by their capacity and the volume of 1 unit. For example, the middle tip is a 5 milliliter tip, and each unit is 100 microliters. The bottom tip is a 200 microliter tip, and each unit is 4 microliters. To attach a tip, the filling lever must be in the down position. The ejection buttons are pressed to open small clamps. When the buttons are released, the clamps lock the tip in place. With the ejection buttons depressed, insert a syringe tip. Once the tip is in place, release the ejection buttons to allow the blue clamps to lock the tip in place. Note that syringe tips will not attach if the filling lever is not all the way down. Be sure that the tip is seated correctly before attempting to fill it. If the tip is locked incorrectly, you should be able to raise the filling lever and see the plunger rise in the syringe. Set the volume adjustment dial to the desired number of units you wish to dispense each time. With a 5 milliliter tip, each unit is 100 microliters. So if the dial is set to 1, 100 microliters will dispense each time the dispensing lever is pressed. If the dial is set to 2, 200 microliters will be dispensed each time. If the dial is set to 4.5, 450 microliters will be dispensed each time. A setting of 10 would dispense 1,000 microliters. The digital display will not show the volume unless a tip is inserted. A battery is required for the display. If the battery is dead, the repeater will still function normally, but you just won't see the volume displayed. The aliquoting guide will tell you exactly which size tip and what to set the dial at for each reagent. To aliquot the ABE-LA plasmid, you would attach a 200 microliter tip and set the dial to 2.5 so that 10 microliters will be dispensed. Hold the pipette vertically and insert the tip into the solution and pull the filling lever up slowly. Make certain that the end of the tip remains submerged or air bubbles will be drawn up into the tip. The tip should always be primed by depressing the dispensing lever once or twice after filling. This will expel any air bubbles and ensure that the first aliquot will be the correct volume. The solution expelled during the priming should be put back into the reagent stock tube. Now that the tip is full, you can begin to dispense the student tubes. In this example, a 5 milliliter tip is attached and the dial is set to 1.5, so 150 microliters is dispensed each time the dispensing lever is pressed. Touch the tip to the inside of the recipient tube and allow the solution to run down the side of the tube. Dispensing too quickly will cause the solution to splash out of the tube, particularly with larger volumes. As the volume of reagent drops in the stock tube, it will become impossible to fill the syringe tip without aspirating air bubbles. At this point, a micropipette should be used to aliquot the remaining tubes. Use the original ABE-LA aliquoting guide with the blue highlights to aliquot the last few tubes. The parts are basically the same in the Corning Step R: the stop or tip locking lever, the filling lever, the dispensing button, and the volume dial. The Corning Step R basically works the same as the EPI. However, instead of a digital display, there is a dosing chart on the side of the pipette. The top number in the chart is the program number. This can be set between 1 and 9 by turning the dial. The numbers in the column on the far right indicate the tip volume in milliliters. The number 0.2 indicates a 0.2 milliliter or 200 microliter tip. The number 5 indicates a 5 milliliter tip. The number at the bottom of the dial indicates the step number, which is the number of times or steps the chosen volume can be aliquoted before needing to refill the tip. The numbers in the center of the table and down the left side of the dosing table of the pipette are the volumes that will be dispensed. So to aliquot 10 microliters, use a 200 microliter tip and set the dial to 4. To aliquot 20 microliters, use a 200 microliter tip and set the dial to 9. To aliquot 150 microliters, use a 5 milliliter tip and set the dial to 2. To aliquot 350 microliters, use a 5 milliliter tip with the dial at 6. The Corning Step R is not as intuitive as the Eppendorf repeater and has no digital display. Be sure to use the Corning Step R specific aliquoting guide to set the dial correctly. The Eppendorf aliquoting guide will not work for the Corning and vice versa. To attach a tip to the Corning Step R, push the filling lever all the way down, flip the stop or locking lever up, insert a tip and push until it clicks. Lock the tip in place by closing the stop lock lever. Submerge the tip in the solution and pull up on the filling lever. Now carefully press the dispensing button once or twice to expel any bubbles at the end of the tip. Touch the tip to the inside of the recipient tube to allow the solution to run down the side of the tube. Dispensing too quickly will cause the solution to splash out of the tube, particularly with larger volumes. In this example, a 2.5 milliliter tip is attached and the dial is set to 4. So 125 microliters is dispensed each time the dispensing button is pressed. Remember to use the correct guide for whichever pipette model you end up using. They are not interchangeable. If you have any questions, contact your ABE-LA site coordinator.